Good evening, and welcome to Healthy Heart Nation's Heart to Heart conversation, Roe versus Wade, What You Need to Know. My name is Devonna Roseberry, and I am a Director and Justice Chair for Healthy Heart Nation. On June 24th, 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court released its decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which overturned Roe versus Wade. Roe v. Wade is a 1973 lawsuit that led to the Supreme Court's ruling on abortion rights. In Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decided two important issues. One, that the U.S. Constitution provides a fundamental right to privacy that protects a person's right to choose whether or not to have an abortion. And two, that the abortion right was not absolute, but must be balanced against the government's interest in protecting health and prenatal life. It is important to note that there were subsequent cases decided by the Supreme Court since Roe versus Wade, but none reached the issue of the issue that was reached in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. This case challenged the constitutionality of a Mississippi law that prohibited abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy, on the grounds that the law unconstitutionally infringed upon a woman's right to abortion as found in Roe versus Wade. The Supreme Court ultimately found that the U.S. Constitution does not confer a right to abortion and returned the authority to regulate abortion to the states. This evening, we will be discussing the impact of the Roe versus Wade on overturning the Roe versus Wade law on the African American community. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Jasmine Hall. Welcome, Jasmine. And Jasmine is a health ambassador with Healthy Heart Nation. We are also joined by our esteemed panelists, Erica Pearson.
Hello.
Reginald Winfrey.
Hello.
And Javon Payton Stevenson. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Before we get started on the topic this evening, I'd like for each of you all to introduce yourselves, give us a little background information, please. And I will start with my co-host, Jasmine.
Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Hall. I am 24 years old. I graduated from Baylor University in Texas with my Bachelor's of Science. I'm currently getting my BSN at University of Texas, and I'm super excited to be here. Women's health and women's rights is something I'm extremely passionate about. So let's have a great conversation.
Thank you, Jasmine. And next, Attorney Reginald Winfrey.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Reginald Winfrey. And I've been an attorney for 30 plus years now, for 30 years. I went to Hampton University undergrad, mathematics major, went to Emory Law School, graduated there, did a little time in the Army, and have been defending several types of cases since then. Did a lot of criminal cases, some personal injury cases, family law cases, but been an attorney in Georgia for the past 30 years.
Thank you, Attorney Winfrey. And Attorney Javon Payton Stevenson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Javon Payton. I am an attorney in California. I practice employment law. I've been doing employment law for about 4 years. And prior to that, I was doing some family law. So I am definitely passionate about women's rights, anything that has to do with feminism, the woman, I'm all for. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you all today.
Thank you. And Erica Pearson.
Hi, my name is Erica Pearson, and I've been practicing law for about 25 years. Went to 2 HBCUs, Oakwood College, and graduated from Howard University School of Law. That is what really gave me my passion for the world basically trying to figure out, how do you change the world? How does it affect the Black community? And that is what really is making this case really stand out for me. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And Erica, I am so glad that you, the last statement that you made is right on point. That's actually where we're going to start. My question to the panel is, how do you think this ruling will impact the African American community? As Attorney Pearson just said, she kind of views everything from how it's going to affect our community. And certainly this ruling, I think, will have a huge impact. What are your thoughts on that?
So my initial thought is that I think that we've been seeing for some years now that there has been this class gap. And there used to be a middle class, that there was, the rich people, middle class, and then there's poor people. And I think right now we're seeing a lot less of the middle class. And I think one of the things that's going to happen here is we're going to see that gap widen. Why do I say that? It's because, so we know statistically that more Black women are getting abortions. And if you take that right away from them, then what you're going to force is a family who already, so if I'm a Black family, let's call it a family, but with a two income earner household, and I do not have the rights now to an abortion. If I'm having more children that I have to take care of on this lower amount of income, that is going to create, again, you see the widening of that gap in the classes. So I see that being one of the biggest issues that we're looking at. I'm sure that there are more that other people want to talk about, but I really think that it really boils down to what is this going to do economically? Because this is just not a health decision, but it's a financial and economic decision for women as well.
Yeah, I was surprised to. I think I was surprised to find out the statistics that you brought up, that more African American, more women of color are having abortions. I found that I think in 2019, it was estimated that the abortion rate for Black women was 23.8 per 1,000 women, and that was compared to 6.6 for Caucasian women. I was surprised to find that out. Attorney Winfrey, do you have any thoughts on how this will affect our community?
The information that Ms. Pearson just gave, I think, is actually very interesting. I haven't thought about it from that perspective. But I think the fact that the law does not actually outlaw abortion still allows women to have the opportunity to get abortion. It may not be allowed in a particular state, but there still will be abortions that will be allowed in certain states. Now, it may increase the cost of getting an abortion if you're in a state where they don't allow it. You have to travel to another state. And if you can't travel,
add, not to I just want to put this out there before I forget, but not only the cost, but there may be some criminal penalties
for crossing the state line.
For crossing the state lines.
That is a possibility. And so if there are criminal penalties, then I think then all of the issues that Ms. Pearson has raised are very valid issues. And I hope they don't introduce criminal penalties for crossing the state line. I actually think that would be unconstitutional, actually. But I don't see it as being as big of an issue. But that being said, only because I think that still is going to be allowed. And it should be a matter of finding a place where it's allowed so you can go get that done.
So here's the only thing that I would jump in and say is that, so let's say that I live in a state where we're talking about where, okay, I'm going someplace and I don't know how far along that I am. Let's say that I find out when I'm 8 weeks pregnant and there are, you can't get an abortion past this point. And I have not been able to raise the funds because I don't have enough money to get to the place where it's safe, available in that state. That's where I see we run into some issues as well. Because it's not just, this is I hate using this term, but it's a messy subject in that it's not very clean, in that we can just say, okay, here's what's going to happen. Here's the plan. That's not really what happens in these scenarios, is that you have lots of problems And it's like this issue, or the ability to be able to terminate a pregnancy, is the solution to the problem that you are having. And so I guess, and I don't think you're refuting it, but I guess to add on to the point that it could be, again, even though the abortions are available in another state, doesn't mean that it's accessible immediately. And that those are kinds of things that can kind of pile on to the problems that are already there, you know?
I agree with you. I agree with you. I did not think about the aspect that Ms. Roseberry just brought up, the fact that there may be criminal penalties for crossing the state line. I actually think that would be unconstitutional. But if there are criminal penalties, then that's a further barrier to getting the abortions done.
To your point, Attorney Winfrey, I also think that that would be unconstitutional because in the concurring opinion, Justice Kavanaugh did mention, probably because of the fact that people would think about this, that he did not believe that it would be, or states would have the right to prosecute someone for crossing state lines because interstate travel is a constitutional right. So it's kind of funny because if that does come up, now we're breaching even more civil procedure constitutional issues of interstate travel that probably no one wants to talk about. But I do think that it's helpful that Justice Kavanaugh did put it in his concurring opinion. So if this does come out later on down the line, it could be used as leverage to support that constitutional right to go to other states and get the abortion needed.
I guess the kind of the big news story in the last couple of days has been around the 10-year-old young girl who was raped and who traveled from Ohio. I cannot remember to which state right now, but she did travel to in order to get an abortion. And there's talk about prosecuting. They're wanting to question the doctor that performed that abortion. So I definitely believe, as
Are you all there? Okay.
Yeah, I think we lost her for a minute.
Okay.
Devana?
Well, do either of you all know the facts of the scenario that she's talking about?
So I've heard about that as well. And it just, again, it's baffling to your mind to think about I don't think this is the good case to start with, just because when we're talking about making it criminal, we certainly don't want to look at a 10-year-old as it relates to making anything criminal. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's a horrible, the facts of the case are horrible. That, if there's somebody who is 10 years old who has been molested and or raped and is, then found themselves in that scenario, it seems like to me the perfect test case for the other side, meaning that those people who feel like you should have the right, that this is that case that says, listen, this is the reason why we need to make this safe. This is the reason why we need to make it, available for people who may find themselves in this scenario. So I do not know all the facts. Devana, can you hear us now? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to give a little bit more facts about what happened with the 10-year-old?
Yeah, I don't have all of the facts. I heard the story and thought I would mention it this evening. I understand that she was raped by, I think, an undocumented immigrant, and she traveled out of state to get an abortion. And so the question, of course, is, do you allow a 10-year-old to give birth to a baby? And so that's just kind of the debate that's going on right now. And again, like I said, the issue is whether or not the doctors will be prosecuted for performing that abortion. So it's just a fluid situation. It is very messy. And I think it's a lot of slippery slope as well.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, did she go to a state that authorized abortions?
Yes, she did. She did.
And who is it that's trying to prosecute the doctors?
So let me pull that up.
Okay, no
In the
problem.
meantime, I'm
No,
gonna
no
get some
problem.
more
We
facts for
assume that
that.
it be the prosecute in Ohio. You don't think the people in Ohio from the state that she lives in?
I would assume that
I,
that's who
I would assume
prosecutes.
that I would assume they wouldn't have jurisdiction. Let's say she traveled to, I don't know,
Mhm.
Kentucky. I don't think Ohio would have jurisdiction to prosecute a doctor who lives in Kentucky, and their entire business is in Kentucky.
Right.
Now, if you're going to do it under a federal statute, which I don't think there are any federal statutes, I think if you're going to do anything that's cross state lines, you're going to have to do it federally. But there's nothing federally out there for this. That's why I just think it's going to be very difficult and challenging to prosecute these abortions. I mean, if you're in a state where it's outlawed, it's going to have to be done by somebody in that state in order to prosecute. But if you're going across state lines, I just don't see where you're going to be able to prosecute a person for doing it in their own state.
So while we're getting the facts on that, my question to y'all is, what were your initial thoughts when you first heard the ruling was overturned? Without reading any documentation, just what was your first thought about it?
I was shocked, literally shocked. I'm old enough, but not old enough to remember when there was never the right to have an abortion in the United States. And so it's shocking to think that that United States Supreme Court is taking away rights as opposed to giving you rights, right? Because when we always think about the Supreme Court, we're always thinking about we're adding on to the rights that we already have. So I was very shocked about that. And the thing that I did that I'm surprised by, this has been the trend for me, is on that day I was talking to some 20-something-year-olds. Because I'm outside of that age limit where it's not affecting me directly, is what I will say. But I was talking to some 20-something-year-olds, and just the look in their face and the things that I've been talking to more as things have progressed. And I think it is just taking that off the table is just something that was almost unfathomable. I think when we got the leak on what was happening, we thought, okay, maybe that won't happen. But I was completely shocked by it.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to hear your point, Attorney Winfrey, from just a male perspective.
Right. So in general, I'm opposed to abortion personally. That being said, I've been in a situation where my ex-wife and I were faced with a situation where my wife may have died if we went through with a pregnancy, and we actually had to choose the option of aborting. And just by way of background, when I was in law school, there was a young lady who said that she had gotten pregnant by me, and then turned around later on and said that she had a miscarriage. I don't know if that's true or not, but the impact, and I want to talk about like the impact that it has psychologically on people, and in particular men as well, because it was terrible for me to think that I aborted a child. Now, when I heard about the question was, how did I feel when I heard about the decision? I was glad that what I thought initially was that they had overturned the process of having an abortion. But as I thought about it, I just assumed, without even reading the decision, I said they probably did not take the right away. They probably just said that the federal government is not going to be involved in it, that we're just going to return this issue back to the states. And that's actually what it did. They didn't go to the point of saying you don't have a right to an abortion. They're just saying it's not found within the federal constitution, and we're going to leave this issue up to the individuals in each individual state, which I'm a huge proponent of smaller government, not bigger government. And so I thought that was a fair thing to do. Turn it back over to the states where it's closer to the people, that people can make the decisions within their states on what they want done in their states, and they can choose how they want to live and choose what laws should apply to them.
Okay, I totally understand where you're coming from. My thing is, I live in Texas. Texas is going to completely ban it. And so in my mind, the federal government is giving the Texas government the right to control my body and my choices. And that's where it gets sticky for me, because why does someone else have the right to control what I choose to do with my body as a woman? Does that make sense?
It does. And I would like to talk about that, because I talk about that issue that you're talking about, the choice, because there are several people involved in this scenario, and it's not just the woman. There's the guy involved, but there's also a child involved. And if we talk about the woman having the right to have control of her body, let's assume that the fetus is a woman. Shouldn't she have control of her body too? But we're allowing another person to take that choice away from that woman. And so I think there are choices that can be made prior to make sure that people don't get pregnant, that the man can make, as well as the wife, the husband, the woman can make. But I don't think that abortion should be used as a means of birth control. Now we talking about rape, incest, those other things. The woman's life's in danger. To me, those are totally different.
And that's why I think we get into a slippery slope there, because if you're talking about using abortion as birth control, and I will not deny that there are some people who do, but there are the scenarios where it's not. It's a miscarriage issue. It's, again, a messy subject. So how do I then apply something? And I get your issue, and I think that you're entitled to not agree with an abortion, but also not want there to be illegal abortions and situations where women are putting their lives in danger, because I think that that's maybe where we're headed. So you continue to say that that you don't think that they abolished abortion, but there are some states that they did. And then how does that translate? We really don't know what that looks like from here till the end of time. Are all the states going to then to agree based on who's in office? And then what happens? Are women, and I'm doing the same thing that I'm accusing other people of doing, is that I'm saying this one issue, and then I'm causing it to be a whole lot of other issues. But I think that that's really where we are, that abortion is not just this very clean set of rules and regulations, that there are so many scenarios, that there are so many situations that I can bring up to say, well, how about this? How about this? Whether you agree or disagree.
I agree with that. I mean, in a lot of scenarios, but we're talking about abortion, I mean, there are going to be a lot of different factors, a lot of different cases and scenarios that will be presented. But if we limit for our conversation right now, if we limit it to using it as a means of birth control, then I'm highly opposed to that. Now, if it is the other issue, we're talking about rape, incest, or non-consensual sex, any of those things, I'm absolutely agreeing that I think the woman should have the right to terminate that pregnancy.
And so when you talk about using it as a means of birth control, do you think that is that is because a lack of access to contraception as it relates, and I'm speaking about the African American community. I'm speaking about the statistics that we spoke about earlier, where Black women are having more abortions, and so do you think that they're having more abortions because they're using it as a form of contraception, or do you think that maybe we're just not going to the doctor? Maybe especially at a young age, we're not really going to the doctor to get contraceptives?
To be quite honest with you, I have no idea. I have no idea what the underlying facts are that are driving those numbers.
And I don't either, but here's what I will say is that if a woman a Black woman specifically, is not getting the amount, that working a job where she has insurance. So the first thing that we can assume is that she's not going to the doctor every year to get that annual checkup. And the second thing that we can assume is that if you don't get that annual checkup, that you don't have access to contraception. And that's another issue. So let's just work on this set of facts right now, that she's not going to get her annual PAP, that she's not getting contraception, and she finds herself in a scenario where getting an abortion is the choice. What I think, and anybody can jump in on this, what I think that people are saying is go ahead and have the child, don't abort it, then either give it up for adoption and or take care of the baby yourself, or those are the two selections, right? The scenario.
Well, I would like to add another one in to that. And being a guy, I don't know the issues that women face when they're younger trying to get birth control. But as a young man myself, when there were clinics I can go to without my parents knowing where they would give me condoms. And so on the guy side, I mean, there were ways to get condoms on the guy side of the equation. And if the parties, when they're getting together, would require at least one of them to be protected, that would kind of help reduce some of the things. And again, my objection, if it's consensual, then I don't want to use this as birth control. And I'm not going to put all the burden on the woman. I mean, that the man shares some of the responsibility as well.
So
And so
from
I do know that men can have access to get condoms. They find, I mean, your boys probably have condoms. But I'm sorry.
Sorry, I would also say that I don't think it's too much, especially nowadays. I don't think it's too much access. What's an issue? I mean, growing up in a Black household with a Black mom, Black dad, and coming from pretty traditional conservative values, it was more of taboo to talk about that stuff anyway. And it's kind of like, you know, even if you are doing it, you don't really want to talk about it because you either don't want to make your parents mad or you don't want to make your church mad or anything like that. So it's just completely taboo. So you just kind of keep it quiet so that you don't feel guilty or you don't feel bad about yourself. So it kind of prevents sometimes some people to go get those accessible birth control, whether it's condoms or birth control pills. And they kind of just do it, and then it happens, and now it's too late, and then it's kind of like they're pressed with the what do I do now? So that's something that I have noticed in kind of mentoring people who are within my young people in my community who are in the Black community, what they've experienced in their households, what they've told me about kind of sometimes what happens to where women get to that point. So I just wanted to make that known.
And even with accessibility to birth control, condoms, you can go buy those at 7-Eleven. You can go buy those anywhere. If you are under the age of 18, your birth control is going to be a prescription. A 15-year-old cannot go to the doctor and ask for birth control by themselves. They have to have a parent or a guardian with them that will sign off on that. And so that does come into play when it comes to having the accessibility. Like Javon said, a lot of women or girls are not going to want to go to the doctor and ask for birth control in front of their mom. That's just not something that they're comfortable with. And so then, exactly like she said, that leads them to just, okay, we're just going to do it, you know, and hope that nothing happens. So it's a little different than, you know, being able to go to CVS and grab some condoms really quick. So
that's why I acknowledge up front that I'm not a woman. I was completely unaware of that, but I did know.
So
on the
we
guy
are.
side, I'm sorry, Devon. Well, I was completely unaware of, you know, what was required to get contraception on the woman's side, but I did know for guys, I mean, you can get condoms almost anywhere.
Right.
And you all probably don't know this, but there are some bathrooms that have vending machines inside the bathroom where you can get a condom inside there. I mean, they're for guys, condoms around everywhere. And so again, I mean, I think that's something that can happen on the guy side to kind of help, you know, work on this problem.
I agree. So there are certain apps that, you know, you can track your cycle and your fertility and everything. From a, you know, attorney standpoint, are those apps tracked by the government? I know there's been lots of talk that, you know, those apps are going to be tracked by the government and anything can happen. Are they protected by HIPAA? Like, I know a lot of women are deleting those apps because of what other people are saying about how it's tracked. What do you guys, if you have heard anything about that, what are your thoughts?
So I've heard about it. And so what the thing that I've heard that most people are afraid of is that you're tracking your cycle and that somebody's going to be able to track your cycle because you have it on your phone.
Right.
Can they do that? Probably. That's not really where I see the problem. Now, if I was doing that, I would probably stop just because I'm trying to give you as little access to me as possible. But what I believe, so let's say that you are you have been pregnant and that you are not pregnant anymore and that you reside in a state, this is the only way I can think it will happen, that you reside in a state where it's illegal and you somehow are not pregnant after we found out that you were pregnant. What I think, first off, is it protected by HIPAA? Probably not. And here's why. HIPAA protects certain classifications, the groups and classifications. So between your doctor, your health insurance, those are the types of classifications where HIPAA comes in. I don't think HIPAA is not going to be protecting an app that you have on your phone, because here's what we do. When we put those apps on our phone, we don't remember that we say, I agree, before we can put the app on the phone. And that I agree to all of the terms and conditions and disclaimers are something that we sign up for when we put the app on our phone. And you can best believe that the attorneys they might not have had this specific instance in mind, but they probably thought there's some privacy issues that will come. And so they, when you agree to putting the app on your phone. So one, I don't think it's protected by HIPAA. Two, should women delete them? Probably. Three, how does that criminally get you on the hook? I'm not sure that app will get you on the hook. It might be one of the little crumbs that they use to get you on the hook. So they probably can use your text messages saying to somebody, I'm pregnant, we got to do something about it. They can probably use if it's paid by your debit card, how does that paid? All those types of things. The same things that regular prosecutors would use to convict you of any crime where they're using digital evidence. So it's problematic, but I don't think it's going to be the thing the nail in the coffin that's going to make it so that you are on the hook for getting an abortion when you should not have.
I agree with everything she said. In addition to that, there are Fourth Amendment issues, search and seizure issues that are there as well. And you're probably, if the people who drafted those terms of agreement thought about it, they could be putting language in there where you're waiving your Fourth Amendment rights to be free from search and seizures.
Ooh,
and if
goodness.
you do stuff like that,
Goodness.
then they have the government access to get the information without having to get a warrant. But I don't think that's going to be, like the attorney said, I don't think that's going to be the pivotal piece of evidence that they use against you, but it just be one of a bunch of other pieces.
So you are all, everybody's pretty much coming from a different state, or you're all in different states. We have California, Georgia, Maryland, and I'm speaking about the attorneys. Are you all aware of the current abortion laws in your respective states?
I looked at it briefly in preparation for this seminar.
Okay. And can you just go ahead? We have people joining in from all over. Could you just tell our listeners what the current law is in Georgia? And
Currently in Georgia,
think that there's a big, I think we're waiting on something today, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So I think in Georgia currently that you can get an abortion up to 20 weeks. But I think the governor signed a piece of legislation that's going into law that will outlaw abortion altogether, except for scenarios of incest, rape, and when the mother's life is in danger. I thought there was some litigation going on about that particular statute, and it wasn't being enforced right now. But that's my current understanding of where the law stands.
And that's the heartbeat law is what they're calling it, I believe.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay. All right. And Javon?
I was just going to say I did the same thing as Reginald as well too. I had an inkling being in California that we are probably one of the most liberal when it comes to abortion laws, to where it wasn't much. It was more or less to just confirm what I already knew, which is that you can get an abortion up until the fetus becomes viable, and viability is about 23 to 24 weeks. But also you can get an abortion at any time if having the baby is going to endanger the mother's life. So that is also in the law as well too. But whenever I think about California or some of your more liberal states, we're going to be the ones. I also saw an article about us being, I forgot what you call it, but they did this kind of like when they had immigrants and you're the designated state for like, you can be safe there. And I had seen an article about us being a designated state for abortions. If that's something that a mother wanted to do, of course they can come to California and get it. That's probably not too much people surprise California is for it.
Right. Okay.
And Maryland has the same. Maryland, you are allowed to get an abortion until the fetus is determined viable. And about 22 weeks is about where Maryland stands.
Okay. All right. Earlier today, I was looking at something, and I believe that the House has passed a couple of bills to try to codify abortion rights. Has anyone heard about that? Have you heard that? They don't think that it's going to pass, of course, because it would have to get through the Senate, but the House has passed that today. Your thoughts on that?
I haven't heard about it, but I think that's a fair resolution. If that's the way they want to do it, I mean, I think it's a fair way to do it because you can always vote for those people. If you're in favor of it, you can vote for those people to be there. If you're against it, you can vote against them.
Okay.
And I don't think it's any surprise to any of us that if it could have been codified, then it probably would not have been. Well, that's not fair, is it? I was going to say if it could have been codified, probably wouldn't have been overturned. That's not true. But I don't see it getting codified anytime soon. And I guess midterm elections will let us know kind of where we're going. But I agree with you, Reginald. I think that it is, that's why you need to be involved in the smaller races. That you need to be sure that the person who's representing you at the House and the Senate level are the ones that you want to be there, and that your issues are their issues, and that they'll fight for the issues that are important to you. That's why it's so important to be involved at that level. And then even after they get in office, I think it's holding them accountable to what they said they were going to do. That you also, if you vote them in the office and then they kind of wash their hands and they don't do anything that they said that they were going to do, or they're not fighting for those issues that you put them in office for, then you've got to kind of hold their feet to the fire. But I think it is fair enough. It's just, it's a scary thing to think, though, that either it's going to take a really, really long time to be overturned again, if that's the case in the Supreme Court, because we've got these very young Supreme Court justices that are going to be there for a while, or if you're going to wait until we vote in the right people, again, if that's your issue, to see if we can get it codified. So.
Well, can we just piggyback on that issue right there just for a second? Because I think that's a very, very important issue of being involved on the grassroots level of politics, because it impacts so many different things in your life, including this abortion issue. My ex-wife ran for judge, and when she ran for judge, that's when I learned a lot of these things, that the people who choose to prosecute you are elected officials. The people that sit as judges are also elected officials. The person you have as the sheriff and the police officer, those are elected officials. And if they're doing things that are not favorable to you or your part of your community, that you need to be involved and vote those people out and put people in that will support what it is that you want done in your community. And I found in our community, a lot of times, that there's a segment of us that are very, very active politically, but then there's a large part of us that are not, and just not engaged. And I think that we need to get engaged, and then we can have a greater control over what happens in our community.
Totally agree. And I was having some technical difficulties earlier. I don't know if you all touched on this, but do you see this this ruling as a slippery slope into infringing upon our overall right to privacy? Does anyone speak to that? And I'll just say that, and I know, I believe Jasmine asked the question earlier about, what were your feelings when you first heard about the ruling? For me, that was one of my concerns. Um, not even reaching the issue of, whether or not someone agrees to abortion. For me, my first thought was that this is just seems to me like the tip of a right to privacy issue, and that it could just be expanded into so many other areas.
I hadn't thought about that, but the way they wrote the opinion, I can see where they can start whittling away at the right to privacy.
Mhm.
Because essentially they said that the right to an abortion was not a part of the right to privacy.
Exactly.
And then
And
now they
Clarence Thomas
said,
does address that. He addressed that in his opinion, that he talked about the fact that he did think that it was going to spill over into other rights. That he and I guess he would know better than us that what other rights that they're coming after. That he addresses gay marriage. That he addresses
Contraception.
contraception.
Mhm.
The other thing he didn't mention, and I understand why, is he didn't mention racially integrated marriages as well.
Mhm.
That what he stated was that he feels like that this right to privacy issue could spill over into those others matters. And I mean, why wouldn't it? That's the question. Why wouldn't it spill over into other issues?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
So I'm curious to know if anyone here thinks that the overturning will in any way positively impact our community, the Black community.
are you asking, will it definitely impact our community, or will it impact our community in a positive way?
Will it impact in a positive way in any form, anything that you think will be positively impacted because of this in the Black community?
The decision in and of itself, I'm gonna say no. But depending on how we respond to what had happened, that's where the possibility that the answer could be yes. But if we just don't do anything and just let the decision sit, I don't think it's going to have any positive impact on the community.
Would you mind going into detail about, the way that we respond to that?
So let's say in your particular community that they really believe that abortion rights should be available. Hopefully, this will cause the people to get engaged, involved with local politics, to start putting things in place to make those things happen. And if we get engaged in politics like that, we're actually going to gain greater control over our communities and how we want to live. And if that happens, then I think that is a great thing.
And I think to change what the face of what does that look like? So I agree with that wholeheartedly, that I think we should start getting involved at the state level, at our local level anyway. And I think that the earlier that you get involved, the more that it will be something that you feel like I can be, I want my child to think that he could be a senator. He can be, in the House of Representatives. And you don't really see that until you start running for those local races in your counties, in your state, and all that at the county and state level. But I think it could actually change the face of who's running. I would like to see a lot more Black female individuals running for those types of races. I never thought about doing that when I was growing up, and it's certainly something I could have done. But nobody ever presented that possibility to me that, hey, you could be a judge in your county. Why don't you decide to do something like that? I feel like there were these smaller boxes that we had that are actually changing, that you guys, I believe, have more options in the selection of what you can do and how you can change the world. You really can change the world with your phone. I think that is a huge impact. So I think that it will impact us to get more involved, and hopefully that we'll see more of us, not just at that presidential level, but I agree, Reginald, that you got to start thinking about can I be a prosecutor? Can I be a judge in my county? That makes a positive change as well. Not necessarily on this abortion issue, but maybe so. If it's a state issue, I think it could positively affect it.
Here's where I think, just let's talk about the prosecutor, because I do a lot of criminal defense. Here's where I think that the prosecutor part could help. If you have a prosecutor who is pro choice for abortion, they can choose not to prosecute certain cases because they have discretion. They can choose. Same thing with a police officer. If you elect a sheriff in your county that's pro, they can choose. Everybody's discretion is built into the whole system. They can choose how they handle certain things. And that's why it's so important to get involved at the grassroots level. We get upset about what things happen at the national level, but the control really is at the grassroots level. And I will highlight, I think that's where you want the control. And that's the way the government, that's the way the system was set up in the beginning, was that the control was supposed to be at the grassroots level. And if we really grasp that, we can take control of our own communities and run them the way we want to run them.
That's an excellent point. So let me get you all's closing thoughts on our topic today. I think that was an excellent question that you asked, Jasmine, whether or not, and I'm sorry, Javon, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I definitely think that it's important for us to get involved politically, because that's how we're going to change things. But I think one thing to add, because I do pride myself on being a communication-centered attorney, and basically what that means is I do believe in the power of having a conversation. And for our community, especially women, young women like myself, who might be upset about the ruling, it's important to be a sounding board for younger women who may be having trouble dealing with this, how to process this decision, and being there for them, and being, whether it's a mentor or whether it's someone who you can basically just talk about it. Because through talking, you can come up with solutions about different things that, Black women or Black men, whoever in the community, can do to kind of fight this good fight. And I don't think that we have enough of that. I don't think that we have enough sounding boards in our community to really just talk about either what issues we have about this and what we can do about it. And I know that sounds really basic, but in my opinion and in my practice, I find that having that conversation and being that person, that go-to person to mentor someone and having that discussion does go a long way to where it can get to that level of, hey, you know what you should do is you should vote, and you should persuade and, motivate other people to vote and do something about it. But I think initially it starts with kind of being that person that someone can converse with.
I agree with you, Javon. In my practice, I'm able to mentor to a lot of young African Americans as well. I think it definitely starts with that, and that's one thing that Healthy Heart Nation is passionate about, and that's one reason we exist, and that is to educate, to mentor, and to just be that sounding board. That's one reason why we wanted to have this discussion. We want to, start the discussion. It's not, we haven't touched on every single issue that we could. We only have so much time, and we certainly plan on discussing this issue again, bringing in some of our healthcare professionals who are ambassadors to speak to this issue. To speak to the issue of, one of the big questions I had was, what do the doctors, the OBGYNs, how does their position change in this? What happens if they are performing necessary medical procedures that are necessary following, let's say, a miscarriage? Does that fall under the definition of abortion? So we have so much more to discuss, and we're going to continue to have these discussions to try to educate our community and hopefully, provide some answers going forward. So I would like to ask everyone kind of for their closing thoughts on this, if anyone has anything to add. And I'll start with my co-host.
So I think one of the main things that we touched on is just getting involved. We see lots and lots of people on social media posting things on their stories about how upset they are. So the next step that we all need to take is actually the action portion. Just posting on social media is not going to fix things. So just figuring out how we all get involved to make this better and make everyone feel comfortable, like their rights are not being taken away, is what I see as the next step.
So I think these conversations are really important because they are helping to change me. And when you change you change the world. So I think that the one thing that we should, if we could all, the people who are here and who are listening, if we can agree to do one thing and to do that thing consistently throughout this process, I think that's the way to make your impact. I tell my son all the time that you can fill a bucket of water a thimbleful at a time. If you keep doing it, you keep doing that over and over, you'll fill up that bucket of water. And that's what I think we should all do, is to bring our thimble and try to do as much as we can to change this. And Javon, I really agree with you. Having those hard conversations is really the place to start. So it's not just having conversations with young women. I've got a young man up there that I want to actually, he can have an impact on what's happening in his life, and I can impact him. So you impact that one person, but you try to impact as many people as you can by doing this one thing consistently. And what I'm going to agree to do is to have those harder conversations and try to be solution oriented for the people that you talk to. Say, I know that this is your problem. Maybe you should try this. Maybe you should try that, to try to be, that's the way that I want to hope to be the change that I'm hoping to see in the world.
Ms. Stevenson? Well, I agree with what everyone else has said. I do think we got to act locally and act in our homes, address these issues, have these open conversations with our children and their friends and everyone that's around them as well. But then take action in our local communities, because that's where all change actually begins, is at home. Start at home and then work out into your community and expand from there.
Javon, do you have a statement?
Oh, I kind of wrapped up my statement back in what I could have added, but that would have been it, which would have been, communicating, focusing on communication, but then also, me personally, I do feel it saddens me when I hear about what happened, and I'm sure that a lot of people are saddened as well too. But I agree with what Erica said. We can just choose one thing, to do to focus on, that really, and do it consistently. It only takes like 30 days or something like that to form a habit. And what if our habit is to focus on promoting change within the person or helping someone create the change they want to be. So I think that that's great. And, I think that we should continue having these conversations because that's what's going to lead to at least the action that we need to change.
Well, I think it starts with us. We can't depend on other people to make a change. It has to be within us, and we all agree with that. So thank you guys all for being involved, and for everyone that's watching and listening. Like Mrs. Roseberry said, this is just the beginning. So we'll have many more of these conversations about, the situation going on. And so thank y'all for joining us, and we will talk later.
Thank you all for having me, and thank you all
Thank
for the
you.
conversation.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.